welcome back. Have you ever thought about death or dying? Now, this isn't going to be a miserable podcast. I want to tell you, I want to share something with you. I've lived a very long, pretty healthy life, but I've nearly been killed 3 times. And I'm going to tell you about those 3 times because even the biggest fantasist in the world couldn't make up the circumstances in which I was nearly killed. Okay, circumstance number 1. I want to take you to Calabar. It was an old slaving point in the very southwest of Nigeria. And I think I was about 27 years old. I had 2 small children, and I was teaching at a school called Turkington Secondary School. You can actually look it up. It's still going very, very strong. It was is one of the oldest schools in the whole of Nigeria. It was started in 1846. It's a long time ago, by Scottish missionaries. And I can remember the first month when I got my salary, I was very, very pleased to find out they tithed me. They'd taken 10% of my salary as tithes. I said, but I'm not a Scottish Presbyterian. I'm not anything. It doesn't matter, lassie. You're tithed. Anyway, that's beside the point. So here am I teaching English literature to O-level male students. It was a boys' school in those days. Now it's co-ed. There we are teaching. In fact, I'd be teaching Julius Caesar that very morning. And as for the people who say they can't get Shakespeare, they can't do Shakespeare, my boys loved it because they could see the corruption and the politicizing and the shenanigans that were going on in their own government and assassinations. So they took to it like absolute to water. Anyway, suddenly I'd finished my lesson, the bell rang. In those days it rang a bell, and there was a very, very heavy thunderstorm, and I couldn't go home. It was much too much, but there was lightning and thunder, and I went and stood outside on the old veranda with 4 of the boys. I remember there was Bessie and Etche and Patrick, and I think the M1 was John. Anyway, you remember it was an old bush school in those days, so it had a big stoop that ran all the way around it and a tin roof, and the rain was pelting down on the tin roof, and the 4 of us stood on that veranda. So I want you to imagine the scene. I'm facing outwards. There was Bessie beside me here, there was me, there was Etche, Patrick, and John. And there was the loudest, brightest flash I've ever seen or heard or felt in my life, followed by an enormous clap of thunder. By the time I collected my scattered wits and looked about me, Bessie was dead. His shoes were struck to ribbons. The one next to me was okay. Patrick was dead, and John at the end was okay. And a bolt of lightning had come in, and it had somehow zigzagged between us. Bessie was wearing plimsolls, they were called in those days, not trainers. He was wearing plimsolls. I had sandals. Etche had bare feet. It didn't matter what people were wearing. That bolt of lightning came in, zigzagged between us, and killed 2 of those boys. Bessie just looked as if he was sleeping. His clothes were burnt. He wasn't so good with the other boy. I mean, can you believe it? And apparently here in South Africa, there are many, many lightning deaths in a year. So that was the first time I escaped death. And to this day, I'm not frightened of thunder, and I'm not frightened of lightning, I think that was a kind of peak that you didn't want to relive. Maybe I've just been in denial ever since. The second time was an even more fantastical story, and it also happened in Nigeria. Now, I don't know if you remember the Biafran War in the 60s in Nigeria. What happened? The east of Nigeria declared UDI. It declared itself an independent state from the Federation of Nigeria, from the rest of Nigeria. Why? Because oil had been discovered in the east of Nigeria, and you know the story from then on. Anyway, I had been doing some examining in eastern Nigeria, in Biafra as it was, with two other examiners. And we were driving back. We had overnighted on our way, and we had overnighted at the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. And we took to the road that early evening to get to Lagos. We had a driver. There was myself, Sandy, and Derek. And it was New Year's Eve. And all along the road, all along the routes were roadblocks and very, very drunken people and very, very drunken soldiers. Sandy Pringle had bought an electric train set from Harrods to give to the child of one of his friends in Lagos, and it was in the boot of our car. And every time we were stopped by the brutal and licentious soldiery, they opened the boot and they said, "Any guns or ammunition?" We said, "Of course not. We're three examiners. We've been examining your O-level students, blah, blah, blah." Anyway, at one stop, one of the soldiers took a particular interest in this train set. Anyway, the boot was closed and off we drove. The very next road stop, two very drunken soldiers, Nigerian soldiers, stopped us. "Any guns or ammunition?" We said, "Of course we don't have guns, blah, blah, blah." They opened the boot. There was a gun, a rifle, I can't remember the make. What had happened? The guy, the soldier who'd been sort of playing with this set at the last road stop, because he was very drunk, had left his rifle in the boot. We were taken out of that car. We were lined up beside the road, and I thought, well, it's going to be a dramatic end. I'm going to be shot by firing squad. At that very moment, there was a little wooden hut. You know the huts they have at these sort of complexes in South Africa where the security guard sits. There was one of those huts there, and there was a young Nigerian captain in this particular one who wasn't drunk or didn't appear to be as drunk as the others. He came out, saw what was happening, said, "Stop, stop, stop, what's the trouble?" And we explained to him, and finally we were allowed to get in the car and get to Lagos on New Year's Eve. And you can imagine we consumed a lot of whiskey that night. So death by lightning, I missed. Death by firing squad, I missed. And a few years ago, here in South Africa, one very hot summer afternoon, I was having a rest on my bed in the bedroom. Window was open, the birds were singing, the fan, it was very hot, the fan was whirring above my head, and I had been lying on my back, and I thought, oh, I've got to change position, and I turned over on my side. As I did, the ceiling fan broke off and plummeted down into the bed beside me. I think it missed me by inches. I would have been decapitated. So there we go, 3 brushes with the Grim Reaper, and you couldn't make those stories up, even if you even if you wanted to. But what brought them to mind, I just finished a book called To Exist As I Am by Grace Spence Green. And it's subtitled A Doctor's Notes on Recovery and Radical Acceptance. That sounds a bit sort of long-winded. There we go. Her life changed in a second. 22 years old, she was a fourth-year medical student in London, and she was walking through a shopping mall at the end of an afternoon, and a guy jumped from one of the balconies in the shopping mall, landed on her, and broke her spine in two. I mean, act of God. I mean, how can you even begin to believe a story like that? And she was 22, as I say. Her spine was broken. One day she was in hospital as a student doctor, counselling, looking after patients. The very next day she was a patient herself. It took years of recovery. She was determined she wasn't going to give up medicine. And this is what the book is about, how her journey to recovery. She's a paraplegic. And I think the book, it's made me look at and think about disabled people or people with disabilities very, very differently, because she points out she's not a victim. She's accepted who she is. And she talks about some of the trials and tribulations, like she doesn't want help. She doesn't want help. She knows how to look after herself. She has a catheter, so she has to get to a bathroom. One of her great frustrations is she'll go to a bathroom, for disabled people, and there's somebody using it who doesn't need to be in that particular loo, has just seen, oh, I'll go in here, I won't stand in the queue. Meanwhile, she's dealing with a catheter in dire straits and has to get into that toilet. So just think about that. If ever you're tempted to use the loo for the disabled people, don't do it. But she hates to be called brave or whatever, but how she brought herself back after trauma, after fighting, she holds no grudges against the man who jumped, who survived. She held no grudges. Her boyfriend at the time has stayed with her and encouraged her. And it really is, if ever you felt a bit sorry for yourself or a bit miserable or down in the dumps, really, you must read this. I am to exist as I am. It's astonishing, it's important, and it's really, really radical and amazing. But you'll find it in any good bookshop. And the author again is Grace Spence Green. I'll put it on the information with the program so you can see it. Then, can you believe, I read 3 or 4 books a week, as you know, sometimes more. I was sent a book on African snakes. African snakes, Behaviour and Biology by Marcel van Driel. It's published by Strake. It's got a bit of that's the sun coming in. It's a beautiful spring day in Johannesburg. That's the actual sun coming in. I picked it up. I thought, let me just page through it. I sat and I read it from start to finish. It describes snakes. It tells us all about them. it dispels all these myths. No, a black mamba's mate, if you kill a black mamba, its mate's not going to come and seek you out and kill you. Absolute twaddle. All the myths about snakes. I think, as he says, the ones probably to beware of in South Africa, because most snakes are so timid and so shy. They're going to gap it before you mostly get near them, but they puff at, as you know. It curls up, lovely, fat, beautiful puff at. They curl up, and if you do tread on one, that's not going to be good. And the black mamba too, although again it's going to go away before you ever get near it. And the boomslang, that green snake that you get in KZN. And I just want to tell you this because, you know, as a former Girls Guide, Queen's Guide actually, snake bite first aid, these are the things you must never, ever, ever do if you're a victim of a snake bite or you're with somebody who has a snake bite. All the things we think are the things you do, you don't do. You don't cut or suck the bite area. You don't use a suction device. You don't massage the bite area. You don't put an ice pack on or any kind of heat treatment. You don't apply electricity. You don't apply anything to the wound area, like a poultice or something. Don't give the victim any, like, traditional medicine or something to drink, and don't, and this is what I thought was the thing to do, don't go putting a tourniquet or some tight band above the snake bite. No, no, no. All you do is actually you raise the limb and you keep the victim as calm as possible, because, as he said, there are a couple of very random, rare cases where the snake bite victim got themselves in such a state that they gave themselves heart attacks. Raise the limb and obviously get to a hospital or a clinic as soon as you can, but none of those other things. And such interesting information. How snakes look after their babies. They lay eggs, as you probably know. All kinds of fascinating information. And yes, in Johannesburg we do get snakes. I was once, a few years ago, driving up to my garage in Johannesburg, and at that stage I had a staffy called Rocky. And as I drove to my garage, he was barking. He was inside the garage in the garden, but it wasn't a bark that I was used to. You know how monkeys have special barks for leopards. Birds have special calls in India for tigers. The guides there can tell from a bird alarm call if there's a tiger lurking there. Rocky was barking. I'd never heard the bark before. Opened the garage door. It was electric door, luckily, and there in the garage was a wrinkles, a spitting cobra. Anyway, long story. We eventually got the snake and released him back to the veld. But really, if you know anybody who's interested in natural history or critters around us, this African snake is a really, really definitive book. Lots and lots and lots of pictures. And don't all go, oh, snakes. Snakes are going to run away from you, babe. Lovely, lovely book. And also, because I'm a traveller and I love to travel to the bush, if you're thinking at all of going to Namibia, and if you haven't been to Namibia, you have got to go. There's 1.5 people per square mile. It's one of the least populated countries on earth, and it's got everything. It's got desert, it's got wildlife, it's got game parks, it's got mountains, it's got that shipwreck coast, the wild Atlantic coast. It's got the little town of Swakopmund, that little town that looks always right as if a giant hand had picked up a little town in Bavaria, in Germany, picked it up and popped it down there on the coast of Namibia between the desert and the wild Atlantic. It's got a promenade, it's got hotels, it's got cafes. It's a most gorgeous little town. And yes, the sand blows in from the desert, and many, many people, including the local people, speak German, and we know, and I'm not even going into that, the dreadful, dreadful German colonial past of Namibia. But today it is a most amazing, wonderful and affordable destination. And I wonder if you knew this, it's got one of the best infrastructures of any country in sub-Saharan Africa. Everything runs well. Anyway, that's all a prelude to telling you about a visitor's guide to Etosha National Park by Philly Olivier, who of course is one of our best-known travel authors, and Uta von Ludwiger, the photographer. A visitor's guide, everything you would ever want to know. Do not leave home without this book if you're going to Namibia or Etosha. A visitor's guide to Etosha National Park. Again, you'll find it in all good bookshops. Why is it so good? For example, if you wanted to see a cheetah, they will tell you exactly. I'm looking here at Tamara Dictic, these gorgeous little tiny Bambi-like creatures, so beautiful. Where do you get the best viewing? Klein Namatoni, the Dictic Drive. As you go from Namatoni and you drive up that road, these little Bambi-like things are often standing beside the road. So it will talk you through the animals and birds, the best place in the park to see them, and then it talks you through the water holes. And of course, every water hole is floodlit at the camps. You can only stay in the camps in Etosha. They're floodlit. You can sit there all night. I don't know if they're floodlit all night at other camps, but at Okakuyu, the very famous floodlit waterhole, you can sit there all night. I once sat next to a lady. She was sitting on the bench knitting, and she sat there knitting, and then a lioness came up, and then a rhino came up, and it's floodlit. You can sit round it. It's obviously well fenced, but you've got 100% viewing. And just to sit there when it's all quiet and dark, and suddenly a leopard appears and walks very carefully down to the water and begins to drink. It's an amazing, amazing experience. So that's something I would really recommend. Go to Etosha. Obviously, it's like Kruger. You've got to book months and months in advance. But the rest camps are very good. They're very well run. They've got a shop. They've got restaurants exactly like Kruger or one of our big national parks. Just a word of warning. Driving in, they keep it quite quiet, but driving in Namibia can be very, very dangerous. Why? Especially for overseas visitors. Why? They come, they see these great, long, straight roads stretching before them. They're often gravel. They see perhaps one other vehicle in 100 kilometers. What do? Brrr. They put their foot on the accelerator, off they go, and they skid. And there are fatal accidents on those roads, entirely the fault of the driver. So the distances are very, very long. If you are driving yourself, allow yourself plenty of time and stop. I mean, you can't do Windhoek to Etosha in a day. You'd be mad. Stop overnight. You can do Windhoek to Swakopmund. That's, I think it's about a 4-hour drive. And then, of course, you've got the desert, you've got Sossusvlei. If you're a bird watcher, you've got the salt pans down there. It's just the most amazing country and has, at the moment, no over-tourism like so many European countries. And then just very last, going from wildlife to a really, really wild part of the British Isles. This book, John of John, by Douglas Stewart, it's a novel. It's made the Booker Prize longlist. Now, Douglas Stewart has already won the Booker Prize, I think it was in 2020, with his novel Shaggy Bane. These are not for the faint-hearted because they're raw, they're human life at its best, worst. And this story is set in the island of Harris, way, way up in the wild western Scottish Isles. And it's about Cal, who comes home after having been to university, and now he's coming home to see his dad, who's a sheep farmer. And there are very few people where he lives. This is, it's elemental in its description of the weather, the human nature. There's only a few characters. It's not one of those books where by page 10 you've forgotten who the first 3 characters are, because there are so many. It's just about 4 or 5 characters that will remain with you for a very, very long time. You've got to concentrate. You know, those of you who know me and watch this podcast, I don't do chick lit and I don't do romantasy and I don't do rubbish. If I recommend a book to you, it is really, really good. Not for everybody, but if you really enjoy superb writing with wonderful characters and a great plot, a literary novel, then John of John. And if he doesn't win the Booker Prize, I'll be very surprised, because I've read 2 or 3 others of the long list. I won't tell you what they are. They fade into total I can't even say that, of no consequence, let me say, beside John of John. So there you go. We've gone from nearly being killed to having somebody jump on you and break your spine, to Namibia, from black mambas to the Western Isles of Scotland. Wherever you are, travel safely, look after yourselves, and look after others too.